West Virginia fans have been super excited about the transfer portal players Coach Rich Rodriguez and his staff have brought in for the 2025 season, and rightfully so. But have we been too excited? And how good are these players really compared to what Neal Brown was bringing in from the transfer portal the previous year? And in this episode, we're focusing specifically on the defensive secondary. We're going to look on paper at which coach has brought in the best transfers. And it's done in this episode, which is brought to you by BetUS Online and Katz, Cantor, Stone Street, and Buckner Attorneys at Law. And we're going to have that conversation and compare these transfer classes right after this word from one of those sponsors.
Since 1931, the attorneys at Katz, Cantor, Stone Street, and Buckner have been the voice for victims who have suffered serious injury or death. They have a fierce passion for truth and justice and a sincere compassion for those who have been wronged by others. Whether you have been in a car accident or fighting with an insurance company, or you or a loved one has suffered serious injury or death due to medical negligence, we will ensure your voice is heard loud and clear. Katz, Cantor, Stone Street, and Buckner will ensure there is justice for all West Virginians because we are your lawyer, your voice. Visit us at yourlawyeryourvoice.com.
What is up, and welcome into another edition of Couz's Corner, your home for top shelf college football news and analysis. And I'm your host, Couz. Let's go ahead and dive right into today's show where we're going to look at Rich Rodriguez's defensive secondary transfers for 2025 and compare them to the transfers Neal Brown brought in to the secondary in 2024. We're going to look at their PFF grades and their On3 transfer rankings. And are we getting too excited? Are us West Virginia fans, are we getting too excited about these guys that Coach Rod are bringing in? Are they really that much better than what Coach Brown was doing? I've been told that's the case by some people, that it's really not that, but not that much better, if any at all better. I've had a few people tell me that. Then I've also had a few that are like, man, these guys are way better. So let's just look at it, okay? Go ahead, and I'm going to go ahead and start a screen share here. First, we're going to take a look at the cornerbacks that was brought in both seasons. Let's go ahead and start off. When you look at the corners that Neal Brown brought in, it was Kakor Tarnu from Jacksonville State, Dantes Fagan from Charlotte, Garnett Hollis Jr. from Northwestern, and Aiden Garnes from Duquesne. Their average On3 transfer rating before coming into WVU was 86.71. The average overall PFF grade on the defensive side of the ball for these guys was 77.88. And that was, again, the year before they came to West Virginia. And then their average coverage grade coming in was 77.63. You can see there on the screen who was the high, who was the low. Now, when you compare that to the corners that Rich Rod are bringing in, they are Devontae Golden Nelson from Akron, Michael Coach Jr. from Nevada, Derek Carter from Jacksonville State, and Jordan Scruggs from South Alabama. Their average On3 transfer ranking coming in, or transfer rating, I should say, 86.84. So slightly higher in that regard, in that category, compared to the guys Neal Brown brought in. But that's where it stops. That's where the higher number stops for the Rich Rod guys, because when you look at their average overall PFF grade, it's actually significantly lower than the guys Coach Brown brought in. Their average PFF grade is 73.3, with the high being Jordan Scruggs at 81.1 and the low being Devontae Golden Nelson at 65.4. When you look at the PFF coverage grades, I wanted to focus on coverage here because that's where West Virginia has been struggling for the last several years, okay? I didn't look at tackling and other things. I wanted to focus mainly on coverage here because it's my opinion that may be what cost Neal Brown his job ultimately at West Virginia, was the fact that this defense failed to cover receivers week in, week out for multiple seasons, okay? With the exception of, Beanie Bishop. West Virginia struggled to cover people a lot the last several years, okay? And a few other guys they've had, but for the overall as a team, their coverage was not good, okay? So let's take a look. When you look at the coverage grade, 74.85 was the average coverage grade of the guys Coach Rod brought in. The low being Derek Carter from Jacksonville State at 63.4, the high being Michael Coach Jr. at 87, okay? Now, again, this is on paper. At the end of the day, does it really mean anything because they haven't played a snap yet? No, not really. but I thought this would be a fun exercise. And also, when you look at Michael Coach Jr., he's arguably the best corner on this entire board. When you compare, the guy was heavily sought after by many Power 4 programs, was one of the highest rated corners in the entire transfer portal, and West Virginia was able to get him to Morgantown, despite the fact he played at a G5 school. He was a first-team All-Mountain West Conference guy. So he was one of the best at what he did at the G5 level or G6 level now. Okay? Now, we're going to talk about safeties next, but before we do, I want to talk about my other sponsor and give them a shout-out. It's BetUS. If you're looking for a brand-new sports book, look no further than our friends over at BetUS. Right now, you get a 150% sign-up bonus on your very first deposit with promo code YouTube150. Again, promo code YouTube150 gets you a 150% sign-up bonus. You also get a 125% bonus on your next two deposits up to $2,000. If you do play, though, please make sure and play responsibly. Now, let's get back to the show. Let's go ahead and jump over and talk about these safeties and compare these safeties for Rich Rod compared to the safeties that Coach Brown brought in the portal last year. The safeties that Coach Brown brought in were Jaheim Joseph from Northwestern and TJ Crandall from Colorado State. They had an average On3 transfer rating of 85.96, an average PFF grade of 78.4, and an average coverage grade of 79. The overall PFF grade is just their overall defensive grade. It takes everything into account, right? But I want to focus on coverage for this exercise. When we look at the safeties that Coach Rod brought in, Justin Harrington from Washington, Jordan Walker from Chattanooga, and Fred Perry from Jacksonville State. Average On3 transfer rating, slightly lower, 85.52. About 0.4 of a point lower, ballpark. However, when you look at the overall grade and the coverage grade from PFF, much bigger difference, but still lower. Average overall PFF grade of the Rich Rod transfers at safety, 71.07. Low of 64.9 by Fred Perry. High of 72.8 by Justin Harrington. Or I'm sorry, 75.5 by Jordan Walker. I'll take that back. When you look at the overall coverage, when you look at the PFF coverage grades, even bigger difference. You see a 66.97 grade being the average grade for the Rich Rod guys. Fred Perry bringing that number down with a 52.7. And Justin Harrington being there at 76.3. Now, a couple caveats to this, though, okay, that makes me feel better about these numbers, specifically looking at Fred Perry here from Jacksonville State. Number one, in 2024, he moved from a free safety spot to playing most of his snaps covering the slot guy, the slot receiver. It's a different position. Okay? But so when you look at his 23 grades when he played free safety, look, here were his coverage grades then. 70.7 overall PFF grade compared to 64.9 last year. And a 71.3 coverage grade in 23 compared to a 52.7 last year. Again, he went through a position change. Now, we don't know what position he's going to be at for West Virginia. I'm going to assume they're probably going to put him at spear because he's a headhunter type guy. He can come up and hit you. He can come up and make tackles. He can rush the passer. He's an elite tackler. They're probably going to use him, put him in the box some to help with the run game. They're going to be able to use him in all kinds of different ways. But you got to keep in mind, A, he had a position change, and B, he was covering a different type of guy. He was covering the slot receiver most of the time versus playing free safety where people were funneling guys to him. May have been tight ends, may have been running backs. Who knows? Right? But he was playing a different position. So that needs to be kept in mind. And also, when you look at these Justin Harrington numbers, these are actually from 2023 when he played at Oklahoma. In 24, he only played 4 snaps at Washington. Not a big enough sample size. Didn't play a ton of snaps at Oklahoma either because he got injured. But he had earned a starting spot at Oklahoma, and those grades were put up against the top competition he's played against so far. And he graded out pretty well. 72.8 overall and 76.3 in pass coverage, playing in 2023 at Oklahoma. So I thought that mattered. Justin Harrington's numbers at Oklahoma were good, and he earned a starting spot playing for Brent Venables. If you're good enough to play for Brent Venables, then you're probably good enough to play for Zach Alley in that defense as well. So I expect Justin Harrington to be a starter at West Virginia, assuming he stays healthy. That's been his Achilles heel, is not being able to stay on the field. That's the issue with a lot of these guys that West Virginia are bringing in. They're extremely talented, just haven't been able to stay healthy in a lot of cases, especially the upper level guys. Now, the first question I'm going to pose to you is, when you look at these PFF grades and these On3 rankings and realize that the guys Rich Rod are bringing in are graded or rated lower than the guys Neal Brown brought in, is that cause for concern? Should West Virginia fans be worried about that? Is Rich Rod really not upgrading talent the way many of us fans have thought? Should we be concerned about it? The other question I'm going to pose to you is this: does it really matter until they play a game? Because that's my opinion. At the end of the day, when you throw all this out, I think we need to not get too overly excited and not too underwhelmed either, because we haven't seen any of these guys play a game in the old gold and blue yet. And until that happens, it's going to be hard to judge and form an opinion. And the reason I don't put a ton of stock into these numbers being lower for the Rich Rod recruits or the Rich Rod transfers is because when you look at the players that transferred into West Virginia that I mentioned, almost every single one of them, with one or two exceptions, and one of those exceptions being Dantes Fagan, who's graduating or graduated, almost all of them regressed when they got to West Virginia. They regressed in statistics, and in most cases regressed in PFF grades from their previous stop to West Virginia. That includes Garnett Hollis, and that includes Jaheim Joseph, who came from Northwestern. So I chalk some of that up. Maybe there were scheme fit issues with some of these guys. Maybe they were not putting them in the right positions to succeed. I don't think it was a talent issue. I think West Virginia was misusing guys in a lot of ways. For example, Garnett Hollis. I interviewed Dave Syvertson from OurLads.com, who scouts a lot of these guys, and we specifically talked about Garnett Hollis. I'll leave a link to the video at the end here. It'll be in the corner of your screen. But he said Garnett Hollis is a zone corner who needs to play up tight in coverage because he's not fast enough to keep up with most wide receivers stride for stride. How often did you see West Virginia's playing their DBs up close and playing receivers tight at the line of scrimmage and jamming them? Almost never. At least not that I can remember. We saw them playing off 7 to 10 yards most of the time. And if you're not fast, you're probably putting that guy at a disadvantage. So I think a lot of these guys may have been misused. Garnett Hollis' strength is his length, not his speed. His length is probably what's going to get him into the NFL. Where Rich Rodriguez is recruiting guys with more speed. Whole different way of coaching, whole different way of looking at things here. So at the end of the day, I trust Coach Rodriguez and his staff and what they're going to do with these guys more so than what I did Coach Brown's staff at the end of things, because they had already proven they just were not getting it done defensively, especially in the secondary and in pass coverage. And I blame it mostly on coaching, on schematics, and just on the way they were developing these guys. And I think they were misusing them in a lot of cases. But I want to know what you think. Am I wrong? At the end of the day, is Rich Rod just not bringing in good enough talent either? Or should we just wait around and see? Play the wait and see game here with some of these guys. But I want to know your thoughts on it. I want to give a quick shout out to my VIP channel members of this episode. If you want to be a paid VIP member, you can hit the join button below or go to my channel homepage and hit it over there, or there's a link in my description box. There are perks that go along with each level. Those will be explained once you hit the button. But one of the perks is random shout-outs. The random shout-outs of this episode are Al Walker, who rejoined the channel. Thank you, Al. Dustin Saltz, Sam Ventura, Jake T, Daryl Fletcher, and Cheers, Beers, and Mountaineers. Thank you all for being paid VIP members of the show. Also want to give another shout out to my sponsors, BetUS Online and Cats, Cancer, Stone Street, and Buckner, attorneys at law. Thank them for helping me keep the lights on. I want to remind you to please hit the thumbs up on the video if you liked it, if you thought I deserved it. Please share it with your family and friends. Please subscribe to my channel if you haven't yet. Help me get to my next big goal of 10,000. Don't forget about the video I mentioned in the top corner of your screen there. It'll be the top right corner of your screen where I interviewed Dave Syverson from OurLads.com. We talked about Sean Martin, Garrett Green, Wyatt Milam, Garnett Hollis, and others. In the meantime, have a top shelf day and Q Country Roads.